Um,
The interest, let's take a close.
Good morning, everybody. I have put a message below for everyone to just read. Please mute your mics when necessary. Only if you have any questions, kindly send a chat message or raise your hands. And I pass the floor to Cattioli.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. My name is Katie Ollie, and I'm a specialist in transfrontier shipment of waste for the Scottish Environment Protection Agency, and at the moment the chair of Enforce. As was just mentioned by the Secretariat, technical support, be grateful if you could all mute your mics. And also just to let you know that we will be recording this session. So if you have any objections to us recording, please would you let me know now, either by raising your hand or noting a message in the chat, please. Okay, I'm not seeing anything. So today we will be talking about the amendments to the Basel Convention on plastic waste. This is the third webinar series, and this is the second of its kind. The first two focused on technical and legal aspects of the amendments that were adopted at the last COP, and today we'll be looking at enforcement. So to start off, we'll be having an introduction by Tatiana from the Secretariat, followed by a presentation by Russ Harwood of the Environment Agency in England on the current challenges and successes for the enforcement of the Basel Convention in relation to the repatriation of plastic waste. And then we'll be hearing from Dr. Sam on preparing the legal framework and enforcement efforts for the plastic waste amendments in Ghana. And then from the World Customs Organization on its Operation Demeter 6 and how customs can support the enforcement of the plastic waste amendments. And then Interpol will finish with a presentation on emerging criminal trends in the global plastic market. And as we go through the presentations, can I ask that you keep your questions until all the presentations have been completed, and then we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So Tatiana, without further ado, I'll give the floor to you if you wouldn't mind briefly introducing yourself and then giving us an introduction. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Katie, and good morning or good afternoon, dear participants. We are very happy to see so many participants online. As Katie, well, my name is Tatiana Terikova, and I am from the Secretariat of the Basel, Rotterdam, Stockholm Conventions. And in the Secretariat, I deal with a number of issues, including the illegal traffic. I work also on the various projects on plastic waste, including the NORD project, what we call NORD project, and also I facilitate the network Enforce, and Katie is a chair of Enforce, so it's a network to support parties with implementation of the Basel Convention, in particular with a focus on illegal traffic. Well, Katie already mentioned that this is the Secretariat has been running a number of webinars on different aspects, and this is really the last one. We have a recording of other webinars available on the BRS website, but so this is happening in the context of the fact that the amendments are coming into effect from the 1st of January next year, and they were amended in May, as you know, 2019. So so parties have 1.5 years to prepare for the entry into force of the amendments. And that's why the purpose of this webinar is really to help parties, but also other stakeholders to prepare for the for this amendment becoming effective. And here I will turn off my video just to make sure that we have a good internet. I will just be very brief. I will just say a couple of words about the amendments and about enforcement according to the Basel Convention. So indeed, decision 1412 was adopted last year, and that decision included the amendments to the Basel Convention. Basically, what is controlled under the Basel Convention, what kind of waste are controlled, and what kind of waste are not controlled, specifically on plastic waste. So, as you know, currently plastic waste can be imported, exported as hazardous waste, as well as other waste. Which includes, which are mixed with waste collected from the households. But also we know that quite big quantities of plastic waste are shipped as non-hazardous waste. So the plastic waste amendment, they are meant to clarify the scope, what is being controlled. They do not apply a ban on imports, transit or export of plastic waste, but rather clarification of when and how the convention applies to such waste. So what we have is three entries. And I will start with the second one. So the entry to the Annex VIII, it's, as you know, it's Annex which lists all hazardous waste. Here we have an insertion of the new entry, A3210, which clarifies the scope of plastic waste presumed to be hazardous, and therefore it's a subject to the prior consent procedure, meaning that the country of transit and import need to explicitly express consent or not to such imports. And examples of such plastic waste, which would be traded as hazardous, could be waste which contain hazardous constituents. For example, such constituents could be heat or light stabilizers or some organohalogen compounds, for example, compounds which are used as flame retardants. So this is a hazardous waste. Then another entry which was amended is in Annex IX, and it's Annex which lists non-hazardous waste. It's the amendment. Basically added, with amendment we added a new entry, B3011, which replaced existing entry B3010, and it clarifies the types of plastic waste that are presumed to be non-hazardous, and as such they are not subject to the PIC procedure. So such waste which are included in this entry can be a group of cured resins, non-halogenated and fluorinated polymers, given that waste is destined for recycling in an environmentally sound manner and almost free from contamination and other type of waste. There could be also a mixture of plastic waste, which consists of polyethylene, PE, PP, or PET, again, provided they are destined for separate recycling of each material and in an environmentally sound manner, and almost free from contamination and other type of waste. So you see, you have a lot of reference to some parts which could be interpreted in different ways, and that's why it's important to prepare and to understand how enforcement entities will be dealing with such situations. And finally, the third amendment, it's Annex II, and it's insertion of a new entry, Y48, which covers plastic waste, including mixtures of such waste, unless these are hazardous, and in that case they would fall under Annex VIII, or presumed to be non-hazardous, and in that case they would fall under Annex IX. So basically, it's kind of catch-all provision. It's a plastic waste, which is a mixture of plastic waste. It's not necessarily hazardous, but it requires special consideration because it has challenges for recycling and so on. So these are the, let's say, in a nutshell, these new entries which constitute this plastic waste amendment, and we have more detailed information in the can be found on the website. And just to say a couple of words, why is it important? Because there is a general provision or concept under the Basel Convention that transboundary movements which do not follow proper procedure and whether it's related to the notification or consent procedure or result in deliberate dumping of waste, constitute illegal traffic, which is to be considered criminal by the national legislation. And in fact, Basel Convention has a very detailed definition, but also situations when transboundary movement can be considered as an illegal traffic. So it's various procedural issues, like for example, if there is a shipment which came across without notification or without consent, or the consent was obtained using some false documentation, or what is contained in the shipment is not conforming with the documents, or this transboundary movement results in the deliberate disposal. So more information about illegal traffic we have in the guidance document, which was rather recently approved by the Conference of the Parties. It's in 6 languages, so we have a link here on the website. We invite you to have a look. And just the last point I would like to make is that the reason why enforcement is so enforcement, according to the Basel Convention, it really requires first of all cooperation between parties, because when we have a case of illegal traffic, parties need to cooperate with each other to find a way to deal with the situation and to dispose and the waste in an environmentally sound manner. But also at the national level, the cooperation is really the key, and it really requires various authorities to cooperate with each other at the national level. And I think we will hear from our distinguished speakers about the importance and also how they cooperate in their countries, and as well as we have representatives of customs and police. So these are all important players to enforce the Basel Convention. And in the particular case, there is, the subject of our webinar today, the plastic waste amendment. So I think I will stop here. Thank you very much for attention, and I look forward to hear from the speakers and also questions later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tatiana, for setting the context and reminding us of the background to the recent changes. So as Tatiana's emphasized, enforcement is very important in getting this right. And I think that brings us nicely onto the next presenter, who will give us a case study. And this is Mr. Russell Harwood, who's an undergraduate in environmental science from Basel University. He also holds a master's degree in waste and resource management from Cranfield University. He worked in the private sector for a year as a landfill environmental monitoring technician before joining the Environment Agency in England as an environment officer in 2011. In that role, he's been regulating numerous waste facilities as well as investigating and taking enforcement action against illegal operators. Since 2018, he has worked in the Environment Agency's Enforcement and Waste Crime Unit with strategy and policy development, focusing on illegal export of waste. He was responsible for implementing the agency's waste repatriation process guidance, which they have been using for nearly 2 years. And he also works closely with operational colleagues when overseeing ongoing repatriation issues. Russ, please will you give us your presentation? Thank you very much. Russ, I think you're still on mute.
Hear me? I'm off mute.
Oh, great. Thank you. You have the floor.
I can't see my presentation, okay, so is that something you can assist with?
Unfortunately not. Can the technical assistants help there?
Okay, I've put it on your presentation, but if you go to the extreme left side of your page, you can see there is a small little arrow, and you can go to number 1, number 2, you can turn the pages.
Okay, unfortunately, Tatiana, I can only see the end of your presentation still on my screen.
Wait, hold on. Can you see that now?
No, unfortunately not. No.
Sorry, wait. Hold on. I just moved off the pages. Sorry.
That's okay. I just wondered if it was just me or whether other people can see my presentation as well.
Yeah.
There we go.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, yeah, good morning and good afternoon, good evening, I suppose, depending on where you are in the world. I hope you're all well in this kind of difficult and strange time. Thanks for the introduction, Katie. So, yeah, I'm Russ Harwood from the Environment Agency in England. I'll be talking to you today about the current challenges and success of the enforcement of the Basel Convention in relation to the repatriation of plastic waste. I can see some familiar names on the participant list, so please bear with me if you know who I am and what we do and who the Environment Agency is, but for those of you who don't, I hope this is insightful for you. So, going to the first slide. As I've said, we regulate waste exports in England and attempt to disrupt illegal shipments and create a level playing field for those in industry, ensuring the right waste goes to the right place. We have 2 national teams, one of waste regimes. There are officers undertaking compliance inspections across the country. We've got another National Enforcement Service team. They're a team of dedicated port officers, including at Felixstowe, where we have around 8,000 import and export containers passing every day. That team also has technical specialists and, importantly, intelligence staff, and that team's responsible for visiting the highest risk load sites, along with the waste regimes team that I mentioned just a minute ago. Okay, I'll move on to the next slide. So, our interventions regulating waste exports. When it comes to the regulation of exports in the Environment Agency, we are exclusively intelligence-led. As I said, we intervene at our ports and upstream at the loading sites to prevent waste being illegally exported. And we receive information from both internal and external sources to help build our intelligence picture and develop our risk profiles on which operators and specific materials to target, rather than trying to target absolutely everything. So I just emphasise that we target shipments based on that intelligence, and we do not randomly inspect containers at port, which gives us a higher success rate, whilst not unnecessarily impacting on legitimate shipments, because we appreciate it costs a lot of money to stop shipments, so we don't want to do it when it's not necessary. We perceive the export of greenest waste to pose the highest risk in terms of illegal export, so naturally we focus our limited resource on this. The National Enforcement Team I've already mentioned, in 2018 to 19, they inspected 926 containers at our English ports, of which 236 of those were returned to their load sites for whatever reason. Maybe the waste was unsuitable, paperwork wasn't completed correctly, for example. That prevented illegal export from England of 5,349 tonnes approximately. Additionally, though, importantly, so with the waste regimes team and also with that team, we also prevented an additional 7,341 tonnes of waste leaving the load sites in the first place. So before it even gets to the port, obviously that waste possibly would otherwise have been illegally exported. And that's where most of our effort now is being targeted. So rather than the last port of call at the ports, we're trying to stop it getting there in the first place. So over the last 4 years, though, on average, approximately 26% of the containers our port officers have stopped have been returned to their sites of loading. So what's happening? Why is this waste being illegally exported? Well, I suspect you'll be unsurprised that there are numerous reasons why it's being stopped or returned. So we've seen instances of recovery facilities in the overseas countries not even existing or being a third floor on a block of flats, you name it. I think our teams have seen it. Increasingly, we're seeing an emerging threat of waste being exported overseas as non-waste. Obviously, this completely circumvents the waste regulations and makes it even more difficult for our intelligence teams to spot it before it leaves. So that's an increasing threat that we're aware of, which is a bit concerning. Undoubtedly, the impact of the China waste bans have exposed problems with the quality of some greenness waste being exported from England, possibly end up in destinations it wouldn't otherwise have gone to prior to the China ban. So something we're keen to address over time. Greenness waste being contaminated with hazardous materials, such as dirty nappies, packaging items that are still contaminated with foodstuffs. Waste being incorrectly shipped as green list, where it should have been pre-notified. Hazardous waste being exported to non-OECD countries, we've seen that quite a bit as well. Also waste being exported to countries that it should never have been sent to in the first place, which has led to repatriations. And we've subsequently picked up more repatriations of greenness waste. That informs our risk profiling. We're spotting more unsuitable greenness paper and plastic in particular, so that's what our intelligence, technical officers and ports teams focus on at the moment in particular, at the ports and upstream at load sites. So when it does unfortunately go wrong, the Environment Agency, as the competent authority for England, has a statutory obligation, like any other competent authority, to arrange and finance a return of the illegally exported waste to England, especially when those responsible cannot be found or be relied upon to return it. And we do take our responsibility to repatriate waste and the requests we receive very seriously. Obviously, we do try our best to get the voluntary return, the logistical financial return by those responsible for it, but unfortunately it's not always possible. We've dealt with over 100 repatriation requests within the last year, or voluntary returns, and because of the success of our teams working hard to ensure that others are responsible for bringing it back, we've only had to pay for the repatriation of those from Poland, which occurred in 2019. To achieve this, we implement a multi-departmental approach. The Environment Agency is the enforcement body for waste exports across the entire country of England. We do it all in-house. So we use a multi-department approach to oversee the repatriation process, which we feel streamlines the processes and helps coordinate our decision-making. What that means, in essence, is up to 6 different departments within the Environment Agency collaborate to ensure that waste is returned voluntarily by the exporter or the shipper. So some departments are just tasked with the logistics of bringing the waste back or getting those responsible to bring it back, whilst others in our enforcement teams are tasked with the investigative elements of the associated offending. Obviously, we centralise our decisions across the entire country. We focus our investigative effort on the right targets, such as the most serious or offending or repeat offenders. Some of the photos in the slide were taken by my colleague when they went out to Poland in 2018, of which this was repatriated to England. So the successes, which there are many, and the future for us. So like I said, over the last 2 years, we've greatly improved our internal processes when dealing with the repatriation requests that we receive. And we're now using that information proactively by providing overseas, we're proactively using the information provided by the overseas competent authorities to help our risk profiling. And we're more coordinated in our approach. I guess first and foremost, we're fulfilling our legal obligations by managing repatriations, and we feel we're doing it better than we ever have. As I said, we're using the information provided by overseas competent authorities to help inform our risk profiling and taking action against illegal operators. It's one of the things we're trying to be more proactive on. It's something recently that me and colleagues have been focusing on, is identifying the highest risks and focusing our efforts directly to tackle those issues. So, for example, we dealt with a recent repatriation from Romania of WE bric-a-brac and textiles. By using that, we were able to liaise with the industry in England and the UK to help inform them of their export obligations and help them provide guidance for themselves and their members. So we reached a broad range of, I guess, necessary non-waste entities out in the UK, which hopefully over time will have an impact on preventing the illegal export of waste. So onto the Basel amendments and what that means. Well, it should enable us to trace who and where mixed plastic shipments are being exported. Obviously, the requirement for the prior informed consent should reduce the number of illegal exports and bring many exporters within the regulatory system. So we should be able to better target our regulatory effort on those who are clearly flouting the rules, rather than focusing on those that may need just a little bit of help with administrative aspects that we can advise and guide. Hopefully, obviously, the amendments, as we'd all would like, would lead to less illegal waste exports and therefore less repatriations. But there are challenges. I think we'd all acknowledge that. I think we recognise that the Basel amendments won't entirely stop criminals exploiting the export sector to make money. Obviously, they make it their living to do that. So illegal waste exports will continue to be shipped. Most likely mixed and contaminated plastic will still go. Possibly they'll try and get it out of the country's green list or as non-waste, as I've mentioned before. We acknowledge that the industry and other nations may adopt a differing technical interpretation of the Basel amendments. As with any, more resource would enable us to make a greater impact on preventing illegal exports. So we've got 2 teams of varying numbers of staff, but we've got a lot of ports with a lot of waste moving. So undoubtedly, with more staff and boots on the ground, we'd have a better oversight of what's leaving our shores. And we do acknowledge that we need to better understand where, how, and why waste from England is being illegally exported to overseas nations. And that's where we appreciate and we plead for your help on understanding the global picture. Who is being impacted by the illegal waste exports and what we can do as a regulating authority to stop this. As Interpol colleagues will mention later on in the presentations, there is undoubtedly an increase in organised crime groups exploiting the plastic waste market for an awful financial gain. But we need to work together to monitor the sources, in particular, and the methods they use, the routes they take to facilitate this criminal trade. Because unless we understand that, I think it's unlikely that we'll be able to tackle the problem head on. So what can we all do? I think there is undoubtedly lots we can all do. One of our main aims in the Environment Agency is to work more collaboratively with our international partners across the globe to prevent and disrupt the genuine illegal trade. Obviously, we can advise and guide those that need the help, but we want to focus our limited resource on really tackling those that are trying to exploit the export sector from England and across the globe. It would help massively if yourselves, with any intelligence or information or competent authorities, share concerns with us so we can focus our resource on the emerging risks rather than just focus on what we think is important. We do our best, but we don't necessarily know it all. Share intelligence with us so we can form a complete picture of the issues we face. That's quite important. With regards to repatriations, we find that competent authorities notifying us of suspected illegal shipments as soon as possible really greatly helps us target those responsible as efficiently as possible. If we don't receive information in a timely fashion, it's really difficult for us to complete a really effective investigation, especially if offenders aren't in business anymore or the waste was illegally exported a number of years ago. It's hard to identify those and take the necessary enforcement action. When we do receive repatriation requests, getting as much detail as possible from the competent authority is really important so we can really take timely interventions against those responsible rather than them essentially trying to get away with it. So we can all work together to make it more difficult for criminals to operate, by us in the country of dispatch cutting off the source of the illegal shipments, and our partners overseas stopping the illicit destination sites. So yeah, we all do need to work together, and we acknowledge that, and hopefully we can. That is the end of my presentation. Obviously, there'll be questions that I'm happy to answer at the end. I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank the Basel Secretariat and the Enforce Network for giving me the opportunity to present to you today. Hope you enjoy the rest of the presentations, and have a lovely day wherever you are. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Russ, and congratulations on your success. Some of those tonnages were staggering that you've managed to prevent from leaving England. It's interesting to hear the insights of the agency's efforts and how you think the amendments will help. And obviously your request for an increase in collaboration is something very much fundamental to Enforce's mission. So as we're talking about implementation of the plastic amendments, I will hand over to Dr. Sam Adukumi to first introduce him. He works for the Environmental Protection Agency of Ghana, which is under the Ministry of Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation. Sam has a background in chemistry and toxicology, and specifically risk analysis of chemicals, with over 20 years' experience in the sound management of chemicals and waste at the local, regional and global levels. Dr. Sam Adukumi is currently the Director of Chemicals Control and Management Centre of the Environmental Protection Agency of Ghana. Sam is the national focal contact point for the chemical-related multilateral environmental agreements, namely Basel, Rotterdam, Stockholm and Minamata Conventions, and the strategic approach to international chemicals management, SICOM. Sam, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Kathy, and good morning from all over the world, from Ghana, Accra here. And thanks so much for the opportunity to also provide some input into the discourse. We all know that Ghana is a party to the Basel Convention. We actually ratified the convention in May 2003. And for that matter, the COP14 mandating us to amend the Annexes II, VIII and IX should also be of concern to us, taking effect from 1st January 2021. So Ghana has the obligation to take appropriate legal, administrative, and other measures to implement and enforce the convention in accordance with Articles 4.3, 4.4, and 9.5. Ghana has done a lot of work to actually implement the Basel Convention through legislation. In 2016, we put in place a national legislation called the Act 917 and its other LI 2250 to actually domesticate the Basel Convention. And thankfully, through the BRS pilot project titled Marine Litter and Microplastics, promoting the environmental sound management of plastic waste and achieving the prevention and minimization of the generation of plastic waste, we have put in place a number of actions that will help us implement the amendments. And the goal of this project is to strengthen the national capacity to control the transboundary movement of plastic waste, ensuring their environmental sound management, and preventing and minimizing their generation from source. And it's funded by the Norwegian Development Corporation. It's a 2-year project beginning January last year and ending December this year. But because of COVID, we have an extension onto next year. The project has 3 components, mainly on transboundary movements, like TBM, and also an ESM, and then on tackling sources. Let me talk about the component 1, which is of relevance to our meeting today, on controlling the TBM of plastic waste. For the TBM, we have had some study on the impacts of the amendment, and the draft methodology for inventory that we used actually provided some data, which, first of all, we had a discussion on the focus groups on the impact of amendments. And so far, from what we have gathered, the private sector doesn't seem to largely rely on any importation of plastic waste for their recycling industry. Actually, the waste being generated domestically for them is enough for their work. And we are yet to have more also discussion with the public sector. Talking about the legal and institutional recommendations, the next slide will provide details. For the TBM or the inventory, we've done some inventorying of the plastic waste, and we have also data from the Ghana Customs on the plastic waste. And we are actually still developing our inventory. Like it appears that from 2013 to 2019, there were a lot of importation of the waste, and you can have some tenfold increase of the imports. There's also increase in imports of plastic waste from other countries. Some of them are neighboring countries like Burkina Faso and other regions as well. We are developing a customs training curriculum, which will actually provide training on using videos, guidance documents, and other relevant references and case studies and exercises to tackle such issues as identifying the plastic waste, doing inspections, dealing with potential cases of illegal traffic, and then collaboration. Now talking about the recommendation that we have so far, we think that we need to include certain definitions in our existing laws. I've mentioned a few of them already, but we have a criminal code of 1960, and we think that we can put in place a definition of plastic waste, introduce into the criminal code if possible. And also the definition of plastic waste and waste in the Local Government Acts of 2016, and also include some reference to plastic waste in Part 1 of the Act 917 and the LR 2250 that I mentioned as domesticating the Basel Convention in Ghana. We consider including the Extended Producer Responsibility Scheme for single-use plastics and plastic packaging in Act 917. And then we have the National Plastic Management Policy, and we want to also include the plastic waste definition in the policy as well, and also include precious organic pollutants waste, because plastics also contain some POFs, and then also can provide some PVC list into the national policy. We are trying to also review the existing sanctions to ensure proportionate, effective, dissuasive sanctions in our criminal, civil, and administrative, as civil, criminal, and administrative penalties as well. Then, looking at secondary legislation and bylaws at the local level, we want to develop some model bylaws by the central government to make sure that the national plastic management policy is fully operational, and also ensure the adoption of bylaws and other secondary legislation by local government within clear timelines. We also want to allocate on specific roles and responsibilities to all involved, the public institutions, the central and the local levels, as well as put in place efficient compliance, audit and review mechanisms. We want to also really tackle about the TBM issue to some extent by including the plastic waste in our first schedule. The Act 917 actually has some schedules. We have a list of hazardous and other waste, so we could infuse the plastic waste in there. And the fifth schedule is about the items to which levy is applicable. We can also include the issue there. Then we have imports of hazardous waste, hazardous plastic waste, which should be banned under the amendment. As with the amendment. So we will consider extending the ban to domestic production as well, and the use of plastic types from the Annex 8. So again, looking at the National Plastic Management Policy, we could also introduce indications regarding transboundary movement of plastic waste within the framework of the 2019 amendment of the Basel Annexes, and also establish a system for maintaining a proper inventory of imports and exports. We need to also include the new instrument at a local level, bylaws, secondary legislation, at the local levels to include clear provisions and procedures on classification, definition, defining mandates and competencies for monitoring, controls, enforcement, prosecution, and takebacks. The central government should be able to produce a model bylaw. We need to build the capacity for TBM. Here we're talking about tailored regular training on TBM and illegal traffic for plastic waste to inspection and legal people, and also specialized regular training on investigating and prosecuting waste crimes for illegal people, our prosecutors and the judges. Also introduce a take-back system by establishing specific collaboration mechanisms with countries where the plastic waste originates from for the implementation of take-backs and develop relevant guidelines for practitioners. We also talk about putting in place some operating procedures and risk interventions. Here, adopting standard operating procedures for operators and developing interventions strategies for authorities, that's the ministry, EPA, customs, based on risk assessment that we will put in place. So I think by and large, these are some of the actions that we would like to take at the national level or geared towards the effective implementation of the amendments. Thank you for kind attention. There will be question time, and I'm standing by for addressing all those issues. Thank you very much, Kathy.
Thank you very much, Sam. Hopefully we'll get some questions and answers at the end, but it was very informative presentations about your preparation in Ghana. Thank you very much for that. So now we're moving on to cooperation with Customs, WCO, and hearing from Ru Rath about Operation Demeter 6. Customs is obviously a very important part of the enforcement chain, working with competent authorities, and WCO is a very important partner for the Enforce network. To introduce Ru, he is the manager of the Environment Programme at the World Customs Organization, or WCO. The Environment Programme is one of the key enforcement programs within the Compliance and Enforcement Directorate. Ru is currently seconded from the South African Revenue Service to the WCO. He served in various positions within the South African Revenue Service's Enforcement and Customs Division. Ru, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good morning. Katie, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Katie, for the introduction, and also to the Basel Convention for affording us an opportunity as the voice of customs to share a few thoughts with you. My presentation focuses more on customs considerations, and although it's specifically on one of our enforcement initiatives or Operations Demeter, I will also talk on a few other matters as well, which I think are important for this forum. But just for the context, the World Customs Organization has 183 members and is the only international organization that represents the global customs community. Our members control 98% of international trade, and therefore it's very important that the competence is based within and built and skills are developed within the customs community to ensure that we facilitate trade on the one side, but also enforce where enforcement is warranted. Right. The theme of 2020 for the global customs community is customs fostering sustainability for people, prosperity, and the planet. Each year there's a new theme, but as you can see, the planet and environmental issues have been moved to the fore in terms of a focus area for the global customs community, and all the 183 customs administrations incorporate this into their strategic views and the operational approach. Regarding Operation Demeter 6, it runs between 14 September and 11 October, and we currently have 70 countries participating out of 183 countries. It's slightly less, but this is due to diminished operational capacity due to COVID. I unfortunately can't share the current status as the operation is still ongoing. However, I can see a decrease in seizures so far in the operation compared to previous years. Last year, for example, under Demeter 5, we had 232 seizures, which made up 4,584 tons of different waste types. As I said, I would like to share a few views regarding customs and on plastic waste and plastic waste specifically. Firstly, what one needs to understand is that customs, apart from the UK as described by Ras, but customs is usually in most countries the only agents in the port of entry or exit responsible for dealing with various types of goods crossing sovereign borders of a country. And what one needs to understand is customs also focuses on the revenue, narcotics, weapons, intellectual property right, etc. So it's a lesser known area currently of control and enforcement in many countries. But as I said, the risks are clear and it's increasing, and there's a drive to build capacity within the customs community to deal with waste issues. The WCO plays an active role in enforcement, in enforce and in the plastic waste partnership. What can one do? It's important for the competent authorities to work with customs to raise awareness, to ensure that we get political buy-in. And what we want to see is that waste and plastic waste is a strategic priority, or regarded as a strategic priority within all customs administrations. We need to continuously train specialists and capacitate them as described by Sam. We need to share risk-related information, and unfortunately, there's a wealth of information, but in many instances, it's kept in a silo. So it's very important in terms of the WCO safe framework of standards, where we promote customs to customs exchanges and also customs to business exchanges. And it's been mentioned at the national level, it's very important that the competent authority and the customs community build sound working relationships, where there's a free flow of information within the limits of legislation, of course. Secondly, the Basel Convention, and I'm speaking from a customs office perspective, and understanding again that there are many the areas that the customs officer at the front line needs to deal with, it requires fairly detailed knowledge, and it requires access to confirmation of the status of waste. Is it illegal? Is it not illegal? Again, what can we do? The actions mentioned above, but as I've mentioned, the access to specialized and quick assistance from the national focus points is essential. And then how can the convention and waste types perhaps be simplified for customs officers? That is also very important in assisting the customs community going forward. Challenges, for example, B3011, the types of plastic waste that are presumed not to be hazardous and as such not subject to the PIC procedure. Again, this is an area of risk to the customs community, and placing yourself in the shoes of a customs officer dealing with a multitude of commodities. It's difficult sometimes to understand, identify on face value what is PE, PP, PS, etc. The customs officer would ask, should these not be categorized under Y48? Is this destined for recycling in an environmentally sound manner? How can a decision be made immediately? What does almost exclusively mean? Those are questions we need to answer for the customs officer, frontline officer that encounters waste consignments crossing the border. I also would like to touch on policy certainty. And as you know, parties should implement certain legal or must implement certain legal and administrative measures to facilitate and support the implementation and enforcement of plastic waste amendments. And the World Customs Organization sets the harmonized and commodity description and coding system, or the HS system, which, as I mentioned, is used by 98% of, or for 98% of international trade. The HS system provides internationally for 6 digits, and then there's a 5-year period followed, and then some of the waste amendments only take effect later on. We've got the next iteration or version in 2022, and most of the plastic amendments will only take effect 2027. It's therefore very important for national customs authorities and governments to add additional digits to control the waste shipments and to better ensure enforcement. I can just mention in conclusion that the World Customs Organization has got specific platforms for enforcement purposes. We've got the Central Enforcement Network, which is used by the Customs Administration's delayed seizures. This is used for the identification and processing of trends and patterns. I've mentioned that we play a role in the Plastic Waste Partnership, specifically looking at the HS issues, but we also look at the transboundary movement and the enforcement issues regarding that. We're currently busy in Asia Pacific working with various countries to see what their readiness is. And we're also developing a diagnostic questionnaire, which we would like to roll out for all customs administrations regarding plastic waste. We cooperate with the UNODC, for example, on with our container control programs in various ports across the globe. And we also have 11 regional intelligence liaison officers across the globe, which is responsible for the flow of risk information and helping our members with inter alia enforcement activities. I think I'm going to conclude there. Thank you very much for your attention, and back to you, Katie.
Thank you, Ru. Thanks very much for that overview of the wide-ranging work that custom officers do on our borders. And, you know, of course, from a competent authority perspective, we do recognise the challenges that these new amendments are going to bring for enforcement. Wish you every success in Operation Demeter 6, and certainly look forward to the results. And, you know, I'd like to thank you for your cooperation and work in the Enforce network. I know that was a short presentation, and I appreciate your brevity on this given the time, but I think there's a lot of questions that maybe people might want to ask you in the chat later on. So without further ado, we lead on to our last presentation by Interpol on the emerging criminal trends in the global plastic waste market. This will be given by Benedicte Neal, who has dedicated her academic and professional career to work on environmental issues, with 2 master's degrees in environmental policies and environmental sciences, and a junior expertise on forestry and pollution crimes. She's been an integral member of Interpol's Global Pollution Enforcement Team since April 2017, contributing to the coordination of the largest global enforcement operations ever led against crimes related to waste and marine pollution. Her statistical analysis of official data allowed to identify criminal trends and the risk indicators that Interpol has shared with all member countries, serving law enforcers to enhance their detection and disruption of pollution crimes globally. In particular, Benedicte has recently conducted Interpol's strategic analysis on the criminal trends that have emerged in the plastic waste sector since 2018, which was published in August 2020. Benedicte, you have the floor. Thank you very much.
Introduction. And as the other speakers, I would like to thank the Basel Convention Secretariat for this opportunity to participate in this webinar. And indeed, the plastic waste amendment is an important topic. Waste because to Interpol, and waste enforcement is an important area of work for us. And regarding plastic waste, as you just said in your introduction, Interpol just published an analysis of the criminal trends in the plastic waste sector and their evolution since 2018. So in this presentation, I will give a brief overview of the key findings from this analysis with a particular focus on trafficking goods. So the choice of 2018 to observe the evolution of criminal trends is because in January 2018, the China ban on waste imports and especially on plastic waste imports entered into force. And this marked a significant change in the plastic waste market, as you know, because China used to import nearly half of the plastic waste exported globally from 43 countries. So it means, you can see here on the map from the market in 2016, you can see that all the trade routes converge toward China and that there is a really large quantity of plastic waste that used to go to China prior to 2018. So after the ban, after 2018, alternatives need to be found, rather in source countries or in other destination countries. So in our analysis, we asked what criminal trends and criminal threats are emerging in this context, and what are the appropriate law enforcement responses. And I think this topic is of particular relevance regarding on the eve of the implementation of the plastic waste amendments, because we see how waste criminality evolves in the context of new regulations. So before analyzing precisely the criminal trends, we observed first what were the main changes since 2018 in the legal market of plastic waste. And this is important because waste crime is often profiled as illegal within the legal. So it's not a parallel market, it's rather an infiltration of the legal market by criminals and with illegal activities. So what was observed in the legal market since 2018, the main impact of the China ban was a decrease of the volume of plastic waste internationally traded, and for the plastic waste that remained on the international market, rerouting of those exports especially towards Southeast Asia, but also an increase of the internal European market. So in order to analyze criminal trends, we collected data from the 40 member countries that are presented on the map that you can see here. And country provided information on their main trade routes before and after 2018 to observe the change, and also on the cases of illegal shipments that they detected since 2018. This helps us to identify which are the trafficking routes. So we obtain global image of the transnational trade in plastic waste, as you can see here on this slide, with the convergence of the exports to Asia, mostly. So in total, 2,057 trade routes were identified, which shows the large scale of the plastic waste market. And regarding illegal shipments, 52 routes were concerned by illegal shipments detected since 2018. So it represents 20%, so it shows really a quite large infiltration of illegal transboundary movements within the legal market. And most of those illegal shipments were also oriented towards Asia. And you see all the waste movements that are represented on this slide, so all the arrows that represent waste movements, all of them were impacted by at least one illegal shipment that were found. So it shows, again, the widespread infiltration of illegal transboundary movements. Just very quickly, we observed, we confirmed what we observed on the legal market, that there is a displacement of the waste and the rerouting of the plastic waste exports. So a significant decrease, naturally, of the exports towards China. And in parallel, an increase of the exports towards South and Southeast Asia, and also increase in a lesser extent, but still significant increase of the internal European plastic waste market, or plastic waste trade. And what was interesting is that the illegal trade followed the same displacement as the legal trade. That the displacement you see on the map was valid for legal and illegal trade, especially towards Southeast Asia. So you can see here that Asia is really a key region of interest and is very much impacted by illegal waste shipments. So let's take a closer look to this region. So do not worry about the quantity of information on this slide. I won't get into details. I just want to point out that so the countries that are represented are the import countries within Europe, within Asia, and in red are the source countries where so indicate the trade routes where illegal shipments were found since 2018. For example, if you take the top left country, so it's written PRT for Portugal towards India. So it means that from Portugal towards India since 2018, some illegal shipments were found. And what was interesting here is that overall, most of the illegal shipments found since 2018 corresponded to trade routes that had grown since 2018. You can see, for example, in Malaysia, this is on the bottom right corner, cycled in red. You can see that the arrow that is in bold blue shows the routes that have increased since 2018. For example, Spain, UK, Netherlands, Portugal have increased their exports towards Malaysia since 2018, but they also have found illegal shipments on those routes. What we concluded is that the growing trade routes towards emerging destinations are exploited for illegal shipments. This concerned mostly Southeast Asian destinations such as Malaysia, as I mentioned, Thailand, Vietnam as well, but also other destinations in Central and Eastern Europe, within and outside of the EU, such as Turkey, Romania, Poland, just to mention a few. And one of the consequences of this, of the fact that illegal shipments were found on growing trade routes, is that there were an increase of repatriation requests from those countries. As Russ previously mentioned, it reveals also a series of challenges to repatriate and to take back those wastes. And also some of those countries, such as India, Malaysia, Thailand, those countries, they have implemented and they are implementing new restrictions on plastic waste imports, following the footsteps of China. And this presents a risk that there will probably be further rerouting. If the waste cannot go to China, it goes to other countries. If it's restricted to other countries, there is a risk that it will be further rerouted to more vulnerable countries where waste enforcement is maybe more emerging and capacities are a bit less developed. So really, this rerouting was the main trend that we have observed, the main emerging trend that we have observed since 2018. However, we still observed also some changes in modus operandi and motives of crime. It was mostly not new modus operandi, but modus operandi that we observed more often, so they increased in a way, or also they affected countries that before didn't observe those trends. And the main ones that were observed was a continuous rerouting of waste shipments, an increase of misdeclaration of plastic waste, and increase in illegal waste treatment. So in terms of misdeclaration, the trends that were observed are rather classic, is hazardous plastic waste or hazardous waste that is misdeclared as non-hazardous. In this case, the contaminated plastic waste is often concealed. Misdeclaration is also used for tax evasion, and also something that was observed increasingly was the misdeclaration of the final destination, using transit countries to confuse and make the traceability of waste more difficult by enforcers. And regarding the illegal waste treatment, it really impacted both import countries and also export countries. So for import countries, we saw a very large increase in the waste imported towards unauthorized recycling facilities. And this affected the recycling rate of domestic waste. That is why, and this is the second trend that was observed, this is why in import countries we observed also an increase in illegal disposal of the domestic waste. And this illegal disposal was also observed in export countries for different reasons, simply because the level of export decreased, so there is a waste accumulation in source countries that opened the door to illegal disposal. Illegal disposal or also illegal waste fire, just to get rid of the waste illegally or also accidentally, because this waste accumulation sometimes was beyond safety measure, so waste just take fire. So those are really the key findings. I try to be brief, but you can find more details in our reports, naturally. At the end, Interpol published 3 reports based on this analysis. 2 reports that are the ones on the left on the slide. 2 reports that are restricted to law enforcement, with greater details about modus operandi, criminal profile, and how enforcement can tackle them. And we also published a public report in August, so very recently. So you can access the published report in the link that is indicated in the slide. And also, if ever any enforcement officer participating in the webinar today would like to access the restricted report, it can be requested to environmental crime at interpol.int, that is indicated on this slide as well. So yeah, thank you very much once again, and happy to answer any questions if there are.
Thank you very much.
Just a last word. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank some people that are here present today, like WCO, the Basel Convention Secretariat, also the England Environment Agency that provided a contribution for this report and allowed us to have a better data collection. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Benedicte. It's fascinating to see the trends in the plastic waste market and to learn about the illegal shipments, and especially that they follow the legal market, and, you know, of course, the knock-on impacts for domestic waste recycling. Just to say to everyone that the presentations will be emailed to you, so you'll have that link to the report from Interpol. I know we're running quite short on time, but there are a few questions. Tatiana, there was one to you from Ione Bolenga, but I think you've answered that very fully. So if we move on to one for Rue for WCO. Rue, can WCO send a formal notification to all its member countries that are party to the Basel Convention to establish formal partnerships with the relevant competent authorities? Are you okay to take that one?
Yeah, sure, Katie. Thank you. I've just posted a short comment on that we do that at every forum. But we, for example, even invite the Basel Convention to our yearly enforcement committee to spread the gospel in terms of what needs to be done. that it's ultimately a two-way communication, and I think it's also advisable for the relevant competent authority at the national level to reach out to customs, and we also push it from our side, and hopefully there will somewhere we will facilitate the discussion, and that would lead to a working relationship. But we do, and we will definitely send out with the Meter 6, with the press release, we will also send out a formal notification where we encourage our members to reach out to the relevant competent authorities. So we're on top of that. Thank you.
Great, many thanks, Roo. I think we'll now take the ones for Interpol, if that's okay, Benedicte. One from Nancy Isser in here. Has Interpol performed an impact assessment of the new plastic waste amendments? Do you foresee changes in the MO because of the new situation after January 2021? And if you also wouldn't mind answering the one from Hal van Vesten to Interpol, do you have seen also changes to export of plastic waste to Turkey? Are you okay to take those? Thank you.
Yes, so maybe I'll respond to the second question first because it's very short. Yes, we saw increase of illegal exports towards Turkey. Yeah, this is so yes, I confirm this. And Turkey also revealed, for example, the use of tax evasion related to illegal imports. Regarding the questions from Nancy regarding the risk that could be associated with the plastic amendments not being properly enforced. So yes, Interpol, in this report that I presented, there is a part on risk assessment. So we see some list of risks that are associated sometimes to new regulations that are upcoming, including the plastic amendments. The risk and the change in terms of modus operandi that could be foreseen is that it is probable that there will be a decrease in legal exports of the plastic waste that didn't require a prior informed consent and that now requires it. And of course, there are expected positive impacts in this regard with the decrease of imported waste that cannot be recycled following environmental management. We are expecting also better traceability of the plastic waste internationally traded. However, there is also a risk that if the level of waste that is produced in source countries doesn't decrease, or if the source countries doesn't increase its or source region doesn't increase its recycling capacity, there is a risk that there is accumulation of this waste that used to be exported and that now needs to find alternatives. So the risk that we identify is that there could be illegal disposal in the source country, or also illegal exports to third countries, with probable misdeclaration of this waste as non-hazardous, so using the code B3011, for example, or as plastic waste material. And the destinations that could be affected by this change is that we identify from our consultation is within the EU, because the border control is softer, also towards third countries that are importing non-hazardous plastic waste. So this is in line with the fact that illegal shipments follow the same trade routes. But there is also those countries are increasing their enforcement, as I said. So there is also a risk towards more vulnerable destinations. And some of those destinations we identify are, for example, Laos, Myanmar, but also within Europe once again. Because the waste enforcement is quite emerging in those countries, so there could be here an opportunity or an open door for new criminal trends towards those countries. That's the threat that we identify.
Thank you very much for that fulsome answer. I noticed there are a couple of questions for Russ at the Environment Agency. What we did on Monday when we had the first of this iteration of webinars on enforcement is we took a list of the questions. Given that we're quite short on time, I think we'll do the same today. So we'll note those down and get back to you with the answers. Is that okay, Tatiana, if we add today's questions to Monday's list?
Sure. I guess we could just maybe spend another 3-5 minutes, and then we can just take questions which were not answered, and we will prepare the responses in writing.
Okay, fantastic. So, Russ, you've been asked by Harib about the producer responsibility system in the UK and whether the setup of it has perhaps influenced illegal exports of plastics. And then there's another one from Vicky Cooper about exports from the 1st of January, given that PIC applications won't be able to be submitted until December. Are you okay to take those? Whether you're on mute, Russ. No, still can't hear you. So, Tatiana, are you okay if we wrap up here?
Sure.
Okay. So I'd just like to thank everyone for the time. It's been a great representation from many different participants. Thank you for spending your time to listen to us, and I hope that you've been informed by the presentations. We'll hopefully get back to you shortly with written answers to these questions. Ross Bartley has another one, but I think we'll take that and give a written answer. So thanks to you all for your time today, and especially to the presenters. I do appreciate that. And also to Tatiana and organising this event. You've been very efficient in doing that. So thanks all for your time, and see you again, hopefully for the next Enforce webinars. We hope to have another 2 before the end of the year. Thank you very much.
Kathy, thank you all.
Thanks, Sam.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much, Katie, and thank you very much all the presenters and all participants.
Thank you, Tatiana. Have a nice day. The rest of it.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.